something that conservative Americans have been experiencing now for quite a few years. And now as we see the Biden administration increase their attacks on freedom of speech with their efforts to create their own ministry of truth through Homeland Security, I am very, very excited to introduce this bill. I think it's due. One of our country's foundational principles is the ability to express ourselves freely. That's why it's our First Amendment. For years, this has been at risk or non-existent thanks to the monopoly of a handful of private companies that have the conversation, especially between journalists, politicians, and other influential people. We've all watched over the years as our favorite conservative reporters, pundits, comedians, and social media personalities have been banned or lost interest in Twitter. Let's face it, if the internet is depressing and boring these days, isn't it? Anyone else remember how much fun it was in 2015, 2016? I know I do. I think that spirit of rebellion and defiance and fun, as well as serious debate and open, free, and fair discussion is one of the things that makes America who we are. Even though Twitter has a small number of American users, and they lie about their numbers constantly, it has a hugely disproportionate influence because of who those users are. Conservatives have had to wrestle with the question of whether it's right to wade in and regulate private businesses, but the public interest case is now overwhelming. Social media is important to our democracy, so just like any other vital industry, such as energy or finance, we must have rules ensuring that private corporations don't do things that hurt Americans or even elections. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube combined host almost 6 billion users every month. These firms have grown to such a size that they now provide an essential public function, the exchange of ideas for the future of our country and the world. I am cautiously optimistic about the prospects for Twitter now that Elon Musk has taken over. I don't know Mr. Musk, but I do invite him to come talk with me in Washington, D.C. I'd be happy to put together a roundtable of all the most brilliant people who have been unjustly banned from Twitter, and he can see for himself the urgent necessity of doing right by them, which we all hope he will, as he has stated that he believes in free speech. Whatever happens with Twitter, we have got to protect Americans from the consequences of a very dangerous thing called corporate communism. No one is safe. They banned President Trump. They banned me, my own personal Twitter account. And I think we can all agree that they have too much power, and we need new rules and a new approach. Since Musk's announcement, the left has been in an uproar, and we know why. They can't win on their own merit, so they have to use bullying, intimidation, censorship, and violence to prevail in the debate, but no one is fooled. I'm not here to tell you their reign of terror is coming to an end. We certainly know it's not with the Biden administration's announcement. We don't need to be told what we can and can't say online by nutcases in San Francisco or other places. We don't need the voice of people silenced when duly elected officials are being removed from the public square. We don't need Democrats deciding which news stories are allowed and which aren't. The New York Post was punished for their accurate, truthful reporting about Hunter Biden's laptop. Their story has since been vindicated. It might have made a big difference to the 2020 election. I think it certainly would have. But Americans were kept in the dark and not properly informed before they voted, and the freedom of press was also violated. As a country, we need to renegotiate our relationship with Twitter and Mark Zuckerberg and to remind them of their civic duties. We need to protect America and Americans from abuses and overreach by a few powerful big tech giants. That's why I've introduced my 21st Century Free Speech in the House companion to the legislation introduced by Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee last April. Senator Hagerty and I have been working together on this issue to empower users over the tyrannical censorship which has been all too common over the last few years. Our bill would accomplish three major changes. First, it would eliminate Section 230 in favor of a more updated standard under which internet service providers can remove harmful content while ensuring access for everyone. The internet has changed since Congress first wrote legislation to cover it. Today, a small group of big tech firms facilitate the majority of the world's debate. They decide who sees what and who can speak, and they suppress, shadow ban, hide, or outright ban people they don't like. Usually people who don't agree with what we consider to be the insane far-left propaganda, like the claim that biological men are women and are forced compliance with tyrannical COVID mandates, or people even just joking around or letting off steam. There's some common sense protections for people who use railways, airlines, and even FedEx. It's sometimes called common carriage. That's what I want to do for the internet, and it's very long overdue. Instead of merely tinkering with Section 230, reforming it, changing it up to actually probably cause more violations of freedom of speech, honestly, I want to provide a comprehensive set of protections and guarantees for every single American. These protections will serve Republican and Democrats alike, because unlike today's Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, they are for everyone. Secondly, it would create a minimum standard that all major tech companies must follow to protect users and the freedom of speech. This means no discrimination based on political affiliation, race, or sex. No more shadow banning popular, influential people because someone in California or New York or whoever or wherever just doesn't like their opinions. At the same time, this bill will ensure that firms have the power and responsibility to take down videos of child abuse, harassment, self-harm, human trafficking, and other illegal activity, not according to their own whimsical and ever-changing definitions, but defined in accordance with the American law. Third, it allows users and state attorneys general to sue firms when their free speech protections are violated. The consequences start at $500 per offense. It will quickly become clear to Facebook or YouTube or whomever that they can't ban 500,000 people, who knows, maybe it's even more than that, without putting themselves potentially out of business. And companies will have to publicly declare their terms of service in a more accessible and straightforward manner and stick to them. No more ever-changing vague rules from Twitter, arbitrarily and mysteriously enforced. It has to stop. Our bill does not make these firms permanent or treat them as de facto monopolies like water or electric companies. Unlike public utilities, we understand and encourage other competitors and provide services in this space to promote innovation and accountability. Our bill does not apply to broadband deployment or access. While broadband is an important issue and one that definitely deserves Congress's time, this bill leaves that discussion for another day. Our bill does not require firms to allow all content posted on their site. Whatever disagreements we may have on the best path forward in the big tech space, our bill would empower firms to remove pornography, spam, and other harmful content. Please do read the bill. As always, when you actually read the bill, you know exactly what it does. That's why I like to read the bills. Our bill does not sanction illegal activity published on public forums. Importantly, our bill still ensures that criminals are punished, intellectual property is protected, states are still able to innovate, communications privacy is preserved, and sex trafficking can be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I want to thank my Senate counterpart, Senator Hagerty, support his work on this issue, and I look forward to working with my House colleagues to pursuing the best possible solutions to the discrimination so many conservatives have faced on big tech platforms. Thank you so much, and with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Representative Greene, now that Elon Musk is taking... Oh, I'm Russ with Fox News. So now that Elon Musk is taking over Twitter, are you going to make an appeal to get your account reinstated, or are you just done with Twitter and focus on other social media?
Yes, I'll be definitely appealing for my Twitter account to be reinstated.
Hi, Karen. I'm Igor with HuffPost. I was wondering which of your Republican colleagues thought about wanted President Trump to declare martial law 3 days before the 2020 inauguration.
I'm sorry, I just don't recall that.
It's a pretty big suggestion. Don't think that would have.
We're talking about big tech. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't recall. Anyone else?
I was told with NTV News. So Twitter said yesterday it overcounted its users over the past 2 years by as much as almost 2 million people due to technical difficulties and technical errors. What do you think about that?
I don't think this is a technical difficulty or a technical error. There's been many people, I think, I wouldn't even say we possibly know the number, who have had their accounts permanently banned and have been censored. And it's no accident. It's not an error. They've been banned purposely because of their political views and statements.
Yes.
Brian Mesker from Insider. Why are you so interested in getting back on Twitter when, for one, you already have the other account that your office is able to run, and secondly, former President Trump is trying to promote Truth Social, which is a platform that you've actually personally invested in?
Well, I'm interested in protecting people's freedom of speech, Brian. I think that's the most important thing I can do as a member of Congress, and that's not only through legislation and voting, but it's also in action. So just as I refused to wear a mask on the House floor because I felt it was important to do so when children were being forced to mask every single day in school, and it gives courage when they see people like me in Congress willing to be an example and not just say things on television. So I'm pursuing this. I think it's important to defend people's freedom of speech, defend their ability to be engaged in the public square, so to speak, on the internet. And by doing so, I want my Twitter account back. There's also a difference between a congressional Twitter account and, say, my personal account. On my congressional Twitter account, for all of us here, we're not allowed to talk about our campaigns or ask for money, say, to defend ourselves in court from political attacks and things like that. So it's important for me to have my personal Twitter account, but I also think the other platforms are extremely important too. I'm very supportive of President Trump's new company, Truth Social. I'm supportive of all new companies that may start, and I'm supportive of anyone who wants to use or engage in those platforms.
And just to follow up on Truth Social.
I think you should probably get an email. Have you reached out to Elon Musk yet? And also, you mentioned doing a roundtable. Who else would be involved in that?
Well, actually, I haven't reached out to him yet. I'm kind of waiting for them to finish this process that I'm sure he's very busy working on. There'd be a lot of people I'd love to invite to this roundtable. I see someone standing behind you right there, Milo Yiannopoulos. I think he'd be a great person to have there. Alex Jones would be another person. We'll put together a great list of people who have been just almost deleted from public life due to this type of censorship, and I think Elon Musk would enjoy talking with them. Yes, ma'am.
Congressman, what kind of timeline are you looking at as far as the bill is concerned? I mean, with the Democrats in the majority right now in the lower chamber, how do you see this working right now at this point, given that it just looks like it's going anywhere right now in the lower chamber?
Well, you're right, and that's an excellent point to make. Democrats are in control of all of our committees, and they're in control of which bills are brought to the floor. For example, we can't bring a bill to the floor to vote on unless we are using the process of a discharge petition where we need 218 signatures. This bill will be something that we're going to work into our agenda when we are able to take back the House and hold the majority. So I'm very as you heard me say, what this bill will do is completely stop any type of illegal activity that would be put on these platforms. I don't believe in this whole misinformation thing that the Democrats are wanting to push on people. All that is their excuse and their term for silencing free speech and silencing political speech. For example, parents' ability to say, I want to protect my daughters in their bathrooms and in their sports, that could be considered hate speech or misinformation. Or people's ability to say, I don't want the government forcing me to take a vaccine. I'd like to have full control over my own health and choose if I would like to use my own natural immunity against the biological weapon of COVID-19. People that said things like that were permanently banned on social media. That's not misinformation. That's people expressing their own views, their own opinions, and that's their freedom of speech, and they have the right to make those decisions. And Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, no other big tech company has the right to remove them for stating things like that. Yes, ma'am.
Lauren Burke, The Guardian. Can you talk a little bit further on removing Section 230 will obviously make it easier for everybody to sue the platform for defamation, sue individuals for defamation. Can you talk a little bit more in detail on that?
Yes, removing Section 230 is only one component, and it's an important component. But actually looking at these companies as common carriers, and I just want to make the difference. It's not the same as a common carrier usage for public utilities, say for example like water and electric. This is completely different. A lot of people don't realize that companies like FedEx, airlines, different companies like that are common carriers. And that's what allows any person to say mail a package on FedEx or buy an airplane ticket to travel somewhere. And so making these big tech companies common carriers opens up and gives protection for anyone, no matter their identity, who they are, to be able to engage, be on the platforms, and have their voice and their speech heard there. Of course, barring any type of illegal activity. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate